The darkness holds its breath, it waits for us to look away, to let down our guard. Then it creeps in, it whispers in the shadows, unseen, unheard but felt. These are the stories of those who have dared to peer into the abyss, who have felt the icy touch of fear in the face of the unexplained. These are real-life horror encounters. Two cousins, out for a weekend of fishing and fun, set up camp by a lake. The sun dipped below the horizon. Shadows grew long and the air turned cold. As they huddled near the crackling fire, a low hum began to resonate from the woods. It was a steady, rhythmic sound like a lullaby sung by something not quite human. Fear prickled their skin. A stick snapped in the darkness, followed by slow, deliberate footsteps. Panic surged. They called out, their voices shaky. Silence. Then, a rustle in the bushes behind them. Something was out there, watching. They packed up their gear, their movements jerky and rushed and fled. The hum followed, growing louder, closer. They didn't stop running until they reached the safety of their car, the sound of their own panicked breaths drowning out the nightmare they left behind. The old cabin stood silent, shrouded in a blanket of fresh snow. John, inheriting the property after his father's passing, wanted to spend some time there, to remember, to heal. The silence, however, was deceptive. As he approached the porch, he noticed something strange. Footprints. Fresh footprints leading right up to the door, but none leading away. He shook off the unease and stepped inside. The air was stale, heavy, as if the cabin itself was holding its breath. Later, as dusk settled, he glanced out the window. A figure stood at the edge of the woods, tall and gaunt, its limbs at unnatural angles. It stared at him unblinking. John watched, paralyzed with fear, as the figure raised its arms slowly, deliberately, pointing towards the cabin. A chill ran down his spine. He spent the rest of the night huddled in a corner, the image of the figure seared into his mind. Laughter and the crunch of leaves underfoot filled the air as a group of friends hiked through the woods. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and the trail ahead beckoned them deeper into the wilderness. Then, the laughter died down. The air grew heavy, silent. They had stumbled upon an abandoned campsite. A half-pitched tent stood askew, its entrance flapping in the breeze. A backpack lay open on the ground, its contents scattered around it. A sense of wrongness permeated the air. It was as if the woods themselves were holding their breath, watching. As they cautiously approached, they noticed something strange. The fire pit was still warm. A log crackled, embers glowing like malevolent eyes, but there was no sign of anyone. The friends exchanged uneasy glances. Where had everyone gone? And why? They couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The woods seemed to close in around them, the silence deafening. They decided to turn back, their earlier joy replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. Section 5. The Craigslist Chiller. A seemingly innocent online deal takes a sinister turn. Mark found a great deal on a used phone. He messaged the seller and arranged to meet at a well-lit gas station. The man who arrived was nondescript, his face obscured by a baseball cap. The transaction was quick, the money exchanged with a strange lack of warmth. As Mark drove home, a sense of unease settled over him. He kept replaying the encounter in his head, the seller's shifty eyes, the way he seemed to disappear into the night. Later that night, he heard a noise outside his window. He peered out into the darkness. A figure stood across the street, shrouded in shadow. It was him, the seller. Days later, Mark found his car tires slashed. The air let out in a slow, deliberate hiss. Fear turned to ice in his veins. He had been marked. He was being watched. Section 6. The Face at the Window. A lone traveler at a remote motel experiences a night of terror. Rain lashed against the windows of the remote motel. Sarah, exhausted from a long day of driving, yearned for sleep. But something about the silence of the room, the way the wind howled outside, set her on edge. She kept imagining footsteps in the hallway, whispers just beyond the reach of her hearing. Just as she was drifting off, she saw it. A face. Pressed against the window, staring at her with eyes that glowed in the darkness. She gasped, scrambling back on the bed, heart pounding. The face was gone. She told herself it was just a nightmare, a trick of the light. But the fear remained, a cold knot in her stomach. The rest of the night was a blur of tossing and turning, every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind, sending shivers down her spine. Section 7. The Rocking Chair. A family heirloom moves on its own, sparking fear and unsettling questions. The old rocking chair had been in the family for generations. It sat in the corner of the living room, a silent sentinel to countless family gatherings, whispered secrets, and shared laughter. One night, however, the silence was broken. The family was gathered in the living room, the fireplace casting dancing shadows on the walls. Suddenly, the rocking chair began to move. Slowly at first, then gaining momentum, it rocked back and forth as if propelled by an unseen hand. The family watched in stunned silence, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. No one dared to move, to speak, to break the spell. The chair continued its eerie dance for what felt like an eternity, the rhythmic creaking adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Finally, as abruptly as it had started, it stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. No one spoke of it again, but the memory lingered, a chilling reminder that some things defy explanation. Section 8. The Disappearing Hitchhiker. A late-night drive down a desolate highway leads to a bone-chilling encounter. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the seemingly endless stretch of highway ahead. David, driving home after a late-night visit with friends, felt the familiar loneliness of the open road settle over him. Then, he saw her. A lone figure stood by the side of the road, her thumb extended in the universal sign of a hitchhiker. Her face was obscured by the shadows of her hood, but something about her demeanor, the way she stood so still, sent a shiver down his spine. He hesitated, his better judgment warring with a strange sense of obligation. He pulled over. The woman got in, her silence as unsettling as her sudden appearance. She didn't speak, didn't offer any explanation, just stared straight ahead, her eyes reflecting the passing headlights like 2 points of cold fire. Miles down the road, he glanced over to say something, to break the unnerving silence. The seat was empty. The woman was gone. He slammed on the brakes, his heart pounding in his chest. There was nowhere she could have gone, no way she could have gotten out of the car without him noticing. Section 9. Conclusion. Fear's lingering grip. The unknown is a vast, uncharted territory. It exists in the shadows, in the periphery of our vision, in the whispers of the wind. These stories, these glimpses into the darkness, remind us that we are not alone in the universe. And sometimes what we don't know is far more terrifying than what we do. The fear lingers, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved.